You've worked hard to build your business, and now it's time to grow. Welcome to the Multiply Your Success podcast. I'm your host, Tom Dufour, CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team and a serial entrepreneur. And the purpose of our podcast is to give you a weekly dose of inspiration and education to help you multiply your success. And as we open today, I'm wondering if you are aware of the silent business killer lurking around in your business. And chances are you probably are not, hence the name The Silent Business Killer. And our guest today, Ken Wentworth, also known as Mr. Biz, shares with us how to identify and uncover the silent business killer hanging around in your business using his 3 pillars of financial success. And Mr. Biz is a strategic business partner who helps business owners run their businesses and companies more profitably and efficiently. He's an author of 2 best-selling books, host of an award-winning Mr. Biz radio program, and has been featured in Forbes, Yahoo Finance, Fast Company, and many others. So let's go ahead and jump right into my interview with Mr. Biz.
First of all, thank you very much for having me, Tom. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be part of the Multiply Your Success. So Ken Wentworth, my title, I guess I would say, is Mr. Biz. I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but I actually do own the trademark, went through all that stuff, and I did not nickname myself, by the way. I have a strong rule against that. So I'm the founder of a couple of different companies, but the primary focus is Mr. Biz Solutions. And, I've got a 20 plus year background in the Fortune 15 world. And then left to start my own company. And that was about almost 6 years ago now.
Wow. Well, that's a pretty big jump. Most of my experience has been in franchising. And so we deal oftentimes in the franchise sales world where there's a corporate executive or mid-level manager that says, hey, I'm kind of done with this corporate thing and ready to make that jump. And you're at about as high of a level as you could go at a Fortune 15 company and decided to jump into it. So I'm just curious, what was it for you that made you want to make the leap?
Yeah. So, I was fortunate enough to I was in the top 3% when I left, and was actually in the process of being promoted to the top 1%, which actually made it even a little crazier. I didn't officially get it promoted to that because I hit the brakes on it. I told my boss, I said, I think I'm going to leave. And he got up and closed the door and said, this is not how this conversation usually goes. But I'd always wanted to do my own thing. I always wanted to have my own business, and I explored the franchise route as well. And at one point, and I decided that so I got my master's degree, and my company paid for it, and I had to stay 2 years, then I don't have to pay any of it back. So I literally started the clock and told myself, all right, you've got 24 months to figure out what business you're going to start. What are you going to do? The end of that 24 months was in 2008, which of course was the economic downturn. And I was with JP Morgan was the company I was with. So of course, being in the financial industry, there was all sorts of different super cool things going on. And I got tapped on the shoulder and was fortunate enough to be a part of a lot of really, really cool stuff. So that kind of reinvigorated me into my corporate career. Not that I was ever, I loved my corporate time. I should mention that, by the way. It wasn't like I was frustrated. It wasn't anything like that. The end was I had 2 revenue generating ideas within about a 3 or 4 month period that got shelved for some of the typical big company bureaucracy, red tape, maybe a little bit of ego in there as well. And the second time, I'm like, okay, that's it. That's a sign. And I knew that the skills and expertise that I had developed over my 20 years or so with JP Morgan, I could transfer those and be able to help more people. And I knew based on those recent misses that I was going to not be able to help as many people in the corporate world as I thought that I had the ability to do. And I literally, as I've told the story before, but I was on the 48th floor in Midtown Manhattan. And after that second idea got shelved, and during the elevator ride down, I was like, that's it, I'm leaving. And the funny side note to that story is I got to the airport. I was in, as I mentioned, New York City, and I got to LaGuardia that evening after the rest of my meetings. And I talked to my wife and I said, I'm going to get promoted to the top 1%, blah, blah, blah. My wife's like, oh my gosh, all your hard work. This is fantastic. Like, oh my gosh, it's like a culmination. It's so great. And I said, and by the way, I'm going to leave. And my wife said, you mean your plane's leaving? You have to go because your plane's taking off? I said, no, I'm going to resign. And there was a long pause. And she said, did you get to the airport early? Have you been drinking? Uh, and I said, no, I haven't. And she said, well, how about if you like maybe take a little nap, a little sleep on your plane ride home, and we can talk about when you get home. And once I explained it to her, she totally understood. And she said, look, if that's what you want to do, let's do it. So, the next time I was back up in New York, I talked to my boss and said, I'm going to resign. I don't even know what I'm going to do next. I know I'll figure it out though. And I said, I'll stick around as long as you want. And I was around for several more months. And, was in the meantime, I was trying to figure out, what I want to be when I grow up. So that's sort of the long version of the story, but I think there's enough integral parts in there to make sure that kind of fit the pieces all together.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing story. You get that all of a sudden it just hits you. Said it's time. Now is a time, and away you go. And I'm sure I know I resonate with that when I was bit with that entrepreneurial bug, and have a similar kind of it's time. It's not a great time, but this is the time. Well, you've written a couple of books, and you have some general principles and things you talk about. One of them that I want to talk about is this 3 pillars of financial success that you talk about. And so, you've started your business to help others, to help more people do this, in particular, especially small business owners. So I'd love for you to share and talk about this idea orienting around the 3 pillars of financial success.
Yeah, and it just was kind of happenstance, honestly. It was almost accidental that I didn't realize I had these 3 pillars. But as I started my own business, I'm a fractional CFO, so I work with business owners, help them run their businesses more profitably, more efficiently. And as I was going through and working with different clients, different industries, et cetera, different size companies, different parts of their life cycle, it kind of struck me that I was taking this methodical approach that was similar with every company, regardless of industry or size or age of the company. And I realized as I kind of did some reflection it came a lot from my corporate career. And so those 3 pillars that I every single client I have, I start with these 3 things. Some businesses need help in just one of them. Some of them need help in all 3. And we spend as much time or as little time as we need to initially. But I really feel like, based on my experience, that you have to have these 3 things nailed down, well-oiled machine before you start to talk about anything else, especially right in along lines with what you do, Tom, is you got to have these 3 things nailed down before you start to even think about expanding, scaling, franchising, any of that stuff. Because what I find is if you don't have these 3 things and you start to, say you franchise and you want to have 10 locations, all of a sudden now you've multiplied something that's not that great. And so those 3 pillars are, I guess I'm kind of been teasing that, right? So the first one we start with cash flow. If you don't have cash, you don't have business. So obviously critically important. That is the reason 82% of you always hear the statistics about businesses that fail and what percent and how many don't make it this long and that long. But the US Bank did a study and they found that 82% of businesses that do fail due to cash flow problems. So the way I look at it is I like to flip the script on it, Tom. And I say, if you can get your cash flow right, you only have to worry about 18% of other stuff, right?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. So get the cash flow right. And again, some of those things are subtle tweaks that you can make. And your cash flow might be okay, but we can make it great. There's always some things there. And that was my first book, was about how to be a cash flow pro. I started with that because it was such a prevalent problem in businesses I was working with. The second one is the B word, Tom. I don't know if I can say it on here. Budget.
And
I call it the B word because I know a lot of people don't like that word for a lot of different reasons. I'll tell you, Mrs. Biz doesn't like the B word either. She doesn't like the word budget either. And the thing, I think the word budget or budgeting gets a bad rap and gets a bad connotation from a lot of people, because I think most people, when they think of budgeting, they think of almost the same way that you and I maybe would think of when someone says, hey, I'm going to go on a diet, right? You think of restrictive, you think, oh my gosh, I got to eat, salads and exercise all the time and drink water. Well, a budget doesn't necessarily have to be that way, right? If you're in growth mode, if you franchise your business and you're in growth mode, your budget can reflect that. Back in my powerlifting days when I competed in powerlifting, there were times when I was moving up a weight class. So I was on a diet, but I was on a diet to gain weight, right? And a budget can be the exact same way. It doesn't have to be restrictive. And a matter of fact, it can be the exact opposite of that. So, but a budget, I'll put it to you this way, Tom. If I talk to a prospective client and they turn their nose up at creating a budget, that's a deal breaker for me, because I know how absolutely impactful it is to have a budget and be able to measure against that, know exactly where you're at, where you might be falling short against your goals for the year, where you're excelling, and you can use some of the lessons from that to help some of the lagging areas, et cetera. It's just so powerful. Almost every company I've ever worked with that's not had a budget before, when we institute a budget, the first year they have a record-breaking year, almost without fail. I mean, it is literally that powerful. So that's the second. So cash flow, budgeting, and then the third pillar is pricing. And when I say pricing, I don't just mean, let's go through and increase all your prices by 10%. Absolutely not at all. Primarily what I mean, I'm actually just had a meeting with a client this morning about this, a new client, is almost every business, again, I hate to use these kind of absolute terms, but almost every business I've ever worked with has what I call the silent business killer. And the silent business killer is a product or service that you offer that is at best break even, but most likely you're losing money. Now, you might say, most owners out there would say, Ken, why would I have a product or service that's unprofitable? I wouldn't do that. Right. You wouldn't purposely do it. That's why I call it the silent business killer. Again, almost all businesses have this. You just unknowingly have it because there's other factors maybe you haven't considered that are kind of hidden costs associated with that product or service. And I'll tell you, it is super powerful to go through that exercise, really peel back the onion, find those silent business killers, eliminate them, and then instantly your profitability increases, instantly your net margin increases, your cash flow gets better. Like, it just has this huge impact across the entire business. So if you have those three things, those three pillars correct on the financial side of the house, then you go to multiply, then you go to franchise and scale, et cetera, you are set for success for sure.
Yeah, well, and I love those three pillars. It's very simple, and and I think about a client of ours that's maybe already franchised, and say they have 5 or 20 franchisees out there. This is a very simple franchise support methodology for your franchisees. Get your cash flow, get your budgeting, and take a look at your pricing and help them evaluate all of it. And because they are independent owners and they're going to run and operate cash flow, they're going to have guidelines, certainly. But I've been in franchising long enough to know that very rarely does two franchisees in the same system are going to be similar, but they all run their business differently. They all have their little nuances, especially the behind the scenes stuff. The customer facing stuff is very often almost identical, but right. The behind the scenes, what you're talking about, this is a brilliant thing. So for listening in as a business owner, great idea. And then for my franchisees, even better. I love this whole concept.
I'll tell you, Tom, especially on the franchise side, I alluded to a little bit earlier, but I'll use this is sort of an outdated reference. I need to come up with a new one, but think of it back in the old days when we would make photocopies of something, right? Mm-hmm. You have the original, you make a photocopy of it, and you hold them up next to each other. And the second one's pretty good, but you could tell it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same high quality. You take that copy and you make a copy of it. So now you're 2 removed from the original. Now you compare that third to the first, and you're like, I can definitely tell there's a quality difference. That's the same type of thing that can happen when you have your business and you don't quite have those 3 pillars correct, and you start making copies of it. Right. And so that third, fourth, you open your 6th location. Now you're 6 removed from your original location that maybe you're at and still running. You can't be at all 6, right, in this scenario. And so you're 6 removed, and all of a sudden that copy, instead of it being, you want it to be an 8, 9, or 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, you made a copy of a 6.5. So it became a 6, and then a 5.5, and then a 5. And so, you get further out. Now you're looking at you're a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10 because you've replicated a sort of a bad model or an inefficient model.
Yeah, that's absolutely phenomenal. And just thinking about the photocopy example, It just, I'm sure we've all had at some point, you get those copies of something, you sit down at a meeting or someone hands out like a worksheet or something, and it literally looks like it's copy number 1000 and you can barely make it out anymore. And it's sideways and,
Right.
and it's what is happening here? So that's really funny. Well, what I'd love to do at this point, Ken, is make that transition to talk a little bit about your misses, makes, and multipliers. We ask every guest these same questions before they go. So you've had quite a really interesting career, from being at the top of the corporate world to advising growing small to mid-sized businesses, and being a social media. You've built your own social media following in doing a whole lot of different things here. So I'd love for you to share maybe a miss or two that you've and something you've learned from it along the way.
Yeah, I'll tell you, for a miss, I mean, gosh, I could talk to you about days about misses. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it in a positive way, because in my mind, if you're not missing, you're not trying hard enough. You're not stretching far enough, right? You're being too safe. That's coming from a numbers nerd financial person, right? But I'll take a little bit of a different tact on it and use my competitive athletic career. And just to give you an idea. So I was competing at the national championships, and long story short, I failed. I finished third, and I was extremely disappointed in my performance, because I knew it wasn't just that I got beat. It was that I did not perform up to my capabilities. And I knew what my capabilities were based on my training sessions leading up to my training plan, that whole cycle. I knew what I was capable of, and I fell well short of that. And that, if I would have done what I was capable of doing, I would have won easily. And I didn't. I fell very short. And I was so grossly disappointed in myself that this a funny sort of side note to the story is I got a third place trophy for this national championship. And I'm standing up on the podium, and the picture is hilarious, actually, of me standing there. And you could just see my nonverbal, how disappointed I was. I took the plate off of the trophy, and I drilled a hole up in the corner to make it so I could put it on my keychain. So I had to carry around this third place placard for a constant daily reminder of falling short of a goal and falling short of what I knew I was capable of doing. So I had to carry it around with a constant reminder. And by the way, here's the other part, Tom. I'm carrying that around. Of course, it looks goofy. Anyone who sees my keychains, like, asks a question about it, like, what the heck is that, right? So then I have to tell the story. And I did that on purpose, because I wanted to have to tell the story, because I wanted that reinforcement of that miss, of, I wanted to make sure that that did not happen. I wanted to do everything in my power to ensure that I wasn't going to fall short due to anything on my end. And so I did that until the next national championships. So I had that for a whole year on my keychain and had to tell that story like a million times to people. But that was a big miss for me, and I learned a lot from it. I learned, how to approach things differently, how to not take things for granted, how to, again, I want to be able to control the controllables, as I say. Everything that I know that I can control, I want to do. If I show up to a competition and someone lifts more weight than me, I can't do anything about that. But if I didn't lift what I was capable of doing, then that's on me. And so I learned a lot of lessons from that. Even though it was more on the athletic side of things, I apply it to the business side as well.
Yeah. Wow. What a story. And I love that. I don't know if it's self-inflicted pain, but I like the reminder that you are giving to yourself, just to say, make sure you're stretching and pushing to be the best you can be every day at everything you're working on. So I commend you on that. That's admirable. And well, what about a make? Let's flip things on the other side. And a make or two, you've shared some already, but is there anything else you'd like to share about a make along the way?
A make. I guess a make that I go back to all the time. And again, it's on the athletic side, but it was, I learned that in the weightlifting world, so you make weight, and then you have 24 hours until you compete. So I started to think, weight, obviously they have weight classes. So weight is a big deal there. So I determined that I was going to figure out how to cut weight, almost like you hear wrestlers do, things like that, because I had 24 hours to put it back on. But of course, you do it the wrong way. You feel like crap the next day. You don't do well. So I absolutely poured myself into that because I knew if I could master that skill, it would be very beneficial for me. And I got to the point where, and I promise you, this is all documented, so it sounds absolutely insane. When I tell people this, a lot of times they're like, you got to be kidding me. I lost 19 pounds in a 24-hour period of body weight, weighed in, and then the next day had gained all the weight back. Now, again, it's all water manipulation. I didn't lose, 19 pounds of fat or, anything crazy like that. But the discipline that it took, the planning up front, 12 weeks out, I started putting things into place to be able to accomplish this goal. Read several books, talked to several experts. And what I mentioned all that is to even take it away from the athletic realm again and say, this is how I approach things on the business side as well. When there's something new that I'm trying to learn, I pour myself into it. I go find the books. I read the books. I reach out to the authors of the books and say, hey, can I get 15 minutes of your time? I've read your book. I loved it. And I had some questions. I subscribe to the Steve Jobs theory. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. Some people say, oh my gosh, the author would never return my call or my email or whatever. I'll tell you, in my case, most of the time they will. They're flattered that you read their book. They want to help you. They wrote the book for a reason. And so then the actual execution and the discipline it took to accomplish that goal, I look back on that now when I'm trying to do something difficult, where I'm facing some hurdles in my career, in business, et cetera. I look back and I can look back to that experience and say, gosh, if I did that, whatever this is in front of me is a piece of cake, right? So if I could, accomplish that goal, come on, this is a piece of cake, and it puts things in perspective quickly, and I get right back on track.
Yeah, what a story. What a way to kind of reverse engineer what you wanted to do and go through the process and all of the planning and preparation. I mean, thinking about it was one 24-hour period, but you started conditioning for that 24-hour period 12 weeks in advance for 24 hours.
And even before that was, the reading the books,
right,
and talking with the authors. And so and then practicing, practice makes perfect, right? So I didn't just, roll out of bed and decide I was going to do this and do it, right? So, and again, I mentioned that because you can apply those exact same types of principles to anything you're trying to accomplish in your personal life, in your career, et cetera, any goals you're setting, do that. I talk about all the time, model expert behavior. Whatever you're trying to achieve, someone else has probably achieved something like it or similar. Find them, find the book, find that author. And I'm not saying you copy someone. I'm not saying to do that. I'm saying replicate their behavior. How did so-and-so go about accomplishing whatever it is, that's similar to what you're trying to do? Gosh, talk to them, pick their brain a little bit. For me, I'll tell you, I've done that a bunch of times. When I started hosting my radio show, I did the same thing. I reached out to some nationally syndicated radio show hosts and got help, because the first time I hosted the show, to say it was terrible would be a massive compliment. I mean, it was so terrible. I mean, it was really bad. And so I said, I have to get better at this. And so who can help me get better at this than someone who's already well accomplished in the field, right? And let me pick their brain and utilize some of their knowledge, and maybe they can steer me around some hurdles or some challenges that they faced early in their career.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. And it sounds like, the next question is about a multiplier, but that sure sounds like a multiplier. I don't know if you have another one to share, but just thinking about wow, how that compounds and expands over time.
Yeah, 100% for sure. I'll mention it. I'll keep it short because I know we're running a little long here, but
you're fine.
Another multiplier it's really good for in the entrepreneur business space. And you had mentioned earlier about social media and things, is the power of video. When I started doing videos a few years back, it absolutely exploded the Mr. Biz brand, my social media following, the business, absolutely exploded everything. And so the power of video is real. And all these, I did 100 videos in 5 months. Same thing. I poured myself into it. I studied, I figured out, some key elements I needed to share and things like that. I had my little Excel spreadsheet. I put out 100 topics, and I made the plan. I'm going to do 20 videos a month for 5 straight months. And I did all of them. All 100 were live streams with my phone. Nothing fancy, not over engineered, not edited at all. And I think the feedback I got, and the more feedback I got, it made me realize people enjoy the authenticity. It's not overly produced. It's me being real. There's self-deprecating humor in the videos because I screwed up and I would say, "Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so sorry about that. Let me start again. I'm tongue-tied today, or whatever." And people would, they appreciated the fact that it was real. It wasn't something overly scripted things, but et cetera. But no matter what your business is, that is a way for you to get a leg up versus your competition, because more than likely your competition's not doing those things. And you could do this with a plumbing business. I had a client that has a plumbing business. He said, "I can't do videos." I said, "Sure you can." He said, "What do I do them on?" I said, "What are the top 10 reasons that people call you?" And I said, "Do a video." And like the one example we had, the very first video he did was how to light a pilot light on a hot water heater. He said, "We get that call 10 times a week." I said, "Make a 4-minute video on how to light the pilot light on a hot water heater." People will find that very helpful. And that's the kind of thing you can do. Think outside the box, make those short videos, and it helps people get in touch with you. They understand your personality a little bit. They make that connection with you. Can this person help me or not? What exactly does their business do? That kind of thing was super powerful. Absolutely a multiplier for sure.
Yeah. What a story. That's great. And I think it reinforces, I recently interviewed a guest who's built the largest podcast community in Clubhouse and largest podcast magazine distribution and so on the other day. And he said the exact same thing that you're saying about when he first kind of got into this whole space of video. And for him, it's audio was his thing. And he just said, don't overcomplicate it. Just the cell phone you have today is plenty capable of delivering a quality product to get started with. You can upgrade later on to do all the other stuff. So I appreciate that advice. I think that is well. I appreciate that. Well, Ken, the last question we'd like to ask every guest before they go is, what does success mean to you?
Success. What does success mean to me? Success means to me my ability to fulfill my life's goals. So whether that be, and I think that's different for everyone. And I think for me at least, it's multifaceted. So I don't set success as I made this much money, or I set this many world records or anything. It's just, have I fulfilled the capabilities, the legacy that I want to leave the earth with, right? Have I done everything? Have I tapped out on that in again, multifaceted ways? Have I been able to do that? Have I been able to optimize my time, my, everything, utilize my financial resources to do some philanthropic things that I do? Just a whole myriad of things. But I think that's probably maybe a little bit sappy or whatever, but I guess that's probably how I would define success for me.
Great. Well, and as we bring this to a close, is there anything you are hoping to share or with the audience that you haven't had a chance to get across yet?
I don't think so, Tom. Like I appreciate the ability to come on and talk with your audience and everything. And I guess I would just say, if anyone needs any help, certainly go out and follow me on social media, if nothing else, we share free content 5 days a week, sometimes even more. A lot of videos, YouTube channel that's got, 150, 200 videos on it, 300 videos. I don't even know what it is now, but with a bunch of free stuff. We've got playlists on the YouTube channel, for example. If you wanted to get tips on cash flow, there's, probably 20 videos on cash flow that are all like 4 or 5 minutes long, pretty easy to digest. So you could break it down by whatever, things you're looking for, you might need some help with. But yeah, absolutely. Go out and take advantage of some of the free content out there, and happy to help anyone that might need it.
Great. And where can they find that? Is there a website, or how should they track you down? What's your website or social media handles and so on?
Yeah. Well, MrBizSolutions.com is the primary website. And honestly, if you go out and search for Mr. Biz, you'll find me. I'm on all the social media, including Clubhouse. Follow me on Clubhouse and join some rooms with me there. But yeah, if you search for Mr. Biz, you'll find me.
Ken, thank you so much for being a guest again on our episode today. And let's go ahead and jump into today's 3 key takeaways. So takeaway number 1 comes from when Mr. Biz shared with us this idea of the silent business killer. And he shared that almost every business has a silent business killer somewhere, and it's that product or service that we're offering that's losing money or at best breaking even, and we just lose sight of it. But it's really pulling down the business and we don't even recognize it. Takeaway number 2 is when he shared a make about modeling expert behavior. And he said when there's something you want to do or figure out or find out about, find an expert, replicate it, contact them, model them, pour yourself into reading books. And others have been out, chances are whatever you're looking at, others have done this before and they've written something about it or published something. And he quoted Steve Jobs when Steve Jobs said, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Takeaway number 3 is he shared his multiplier being the power of video and using the cell phone or tools that you have at hand and using that power of video to make this go. And now it's time for today's win-win. So today's win-win comes from when Mr. Biz shared his 3 pillars of financial success. He focused on cash flow, budget, and pricing. Cash flow, budget, and pricing. And if you have those 3 pieces in place, you're going to have the 3 pillars of financial success. And that's going to be a win for you, your team, your company, your franchisees, anybody that's involved in the business. And so that's the episode today, folks. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast and give us a review. And remember, if you or anyone you know might be ready to franchise their business or take their company to the next level, please connect with us at BigSkyFranchiseTeam.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to having you back next week.